Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, I'm happy to be here again with all of you here in Nava-yoga Pitta. Do we have any new guests? Anyone here for the first time? First time comers? Don't be shy. Yes. Special welcome to you. Very good. I'm sorry that I don't speak Slovenian, but we have translation, and I think most of you actually understand very well English. So what we want to do, as you heard, is to warm ourselves up for the coming festival, celebration. In our tradition, any excuse for a party. Or put it another way, the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we understand, appears in this world many times. These appearances are called avatara. You've all heard of avatars from the popular film, but the original Sanskrit word, avatara, means one who descends. And the occasion of the Lord's descent into the world is occasion for celebration. Very much celebration because, for many reasons, as so many of you know, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita explains about his appearing from time to time. He says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanama dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Yes. He appears from time to time in order to rectify the situation, the loss of what is called dharma needs to be rectified, needs to be corrected. What is dharma? People try to translate it. A possible way of translating which may be useful is ethics, ethical life, moral life. It's what we as human beings, what distinguishes us from other beings is the notion of dharma. So we're anticipating the Lord's appearance this coming Wednesday, is it? Yeah. Coming in his form as Rāmacandra. And there's a wonderful account of his appearance, his life. There are many versions. The most famous, considered the most authoritative account, is a book called the Ramayana, which is, nobody knows how old it is. It's very old. Very old, but most popular in many parts of the world, not only in India, also in Indonesia, also in Japan, and also in China, and more in Slovenia. Well, we hope so. I thought I'll start to talk about the Leela, the pastimes of Rama, with reading from not the Ramayana, but from the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Since this is our main scripture, and in the Srimad-Bhagavatam we hear account of so many of the avatars of the Lord, and the account of Rama's appearance is coming in the Bhagavatam just before the description of Krishna in Canto 10. So in Canto 9 we have a very brief account of Ram's appearance. We can, I'll read one verse and Prabhupada's short purport, and we'll see where to take it from there. We may go back to the beginning. I'll read something from the Valmiki Ramayana, and what we want to do is consider some of the themes of Rama's appearance. If someone were to ask what is the main lesson of the Ramayana, the story of Rama, one might say it's showing that it is possible to make a wonderful balance of dharma on the one side and bhakti on the other. Dharma as morality and bhakti meaning devotion. Sometimes it seems like these two are coming into tension and conflict with each other. And indeed, the story of the Ramayana tells us it's not easy. It's not an easy marriage of dharma and bhakti, but it's possible, and when it's done, it's very wonderful. And how is it done? This is shown by Rama and his associates. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'll read from chapter 10 of Canto 9, and we'll start with verse 8 because the number 8 is an auspicious number. The Sanskrit goes like this. Yas satya-pāśa-parivīta-pitur nideśaṁ straiṇasya cāpi śirasā jagṛhe sabhāryaḥ rājyaṁ śriyaṁ praṇayinaḥ suhṛdo nivāsaṁ tyaktvā yayau vanam asūn eva mukta-saṅgaḥ. Carrying out the order of his father, who was bound by a promise to his wife, Lord Ramachandra left behind his kingdom, opulence, friends, well-wishers, residents, and everything else. Just as a liberated soul gives up his life and went to the forest with Sita. That's the verse. Should I read it again? Was it too complicated English? Okay. Because it has subordinate clauses, it's complicated. Carrying out the order of his father, who was bound by a promise to his wife, Lord Ramachandra left behind his kingdom, opulence, friends, well-wishers, residents, and everything else. Just as a liberated soul gives up his life and went to the forest with Sita. Purport. Maharaj Dasharatha had 3 wives. One of them, Kaikeyi, served him very pleasingly, and he therefore wanted to give her a benediction. Kaikeyi, however, said that she would ask for the benediction when it was necessary. At the time of the coronation of Prince Ramachandra, when he would become the king, Kaikeyi requested her husband, Dasharatha, to enthrone her son, Bharata, and send Ramachandra to the forest. Maharaj Dasharatha, being bound by his promise, ordered Ramachandra to go to the forest, according to the dictation of his beloved, his wife Kaikeyi. And the Lord, Ramachandra, as an obedient son, accepted the order immediately. He left everything without hesitation, just as a liberated soul or great yogi gives up his life without material attraction. And that ends Prabhupada's purport to this verse. Yeah. This chapter 10 of Canto 9, and the next chapter, chapter 11, are the whole description of the Rama pastime, the Rama Leela, of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And Shuka, who is speaking the Srimad-Bhagavatam to this king, Maharaj Parikshit, says to him in the beginning of his account, he says, I know you've already heard the Ram story so many times, so I'm just going to give you a short summary. Suggesting that the Ramayana was in circulation. Perhaps Maharaj Parikshit's mother would have been telling him the story when he was young, like that. So he says, I'm just summarizing. And in a summary, of course, so much will get left out. There are so many details that will not be there. But it becomes then interesting to notice what does the Srimad-Bhagavatam, what is the sage, Shuka, what does he include? What does he consider important enough of the story to include it? Of course, in this verse, he's telling what you could say is the essential story of the turning point, one of the turning points in the story of Rama. And one way to think about this, and this might be a way to think about it in relation to ourselves, is it's about a reversal in life. You know this word, reversal? A reversal?
One step forward, two steps back.
That's one way of putting it, yes. A reversal means you think you're going along, everything is okay. You're going this way in life, things are moving along, and then suddenly, whoops, the rug, we say in English, the carpet gets pulled out from under you, and you go flying, flipping like this, and you're on your back. Whoa, what was that? What happened? It can be all sorts of things that are a reversal. It can be a relationship. It can be a career or work situation. It can be a war. It can be so many things. Political situation. And this experience of reversal is very much one of the elements of the Ramayana. And I would say that this is, the Ramayana is giving us this for ourselves. The Ramayana is telling us a story which is, we understand not just a story in the sense of somebody makes it up, but it's telling us a story which is bigger than life. It's about personalities, we say, who are bigger than life. It's about problems, challenges that are bigger than life. At the same time, this particular episode is telling us about something which is not unbelievable, it's very believable. It's very believable if we take the setup. Now, in modern life, we may not see so much in different cultures. Somebody has 3 wives. Maybe not so many people in Slovenia have 3 wives. But it was common for kings in India to have 1, 2, 3, 4, a few wives. Actually, it's said in the Valmiki Ramayana that he had 3 wives and he had 300 concubines. 300 girlfriends. Anyway, he's a king. But 3 wives, and they have, among the 3 wives, they have 4 sons, and the eldest of these is Rama. And it's quite an imaginable situation that the junior wife with her junior son at one point would have this idea. Actually, the idea comes from her maid, that why you're allowing the senior wife's son to take the throne when you could have your son on the throne. Don't you remember the boon, the benediction that your husband has offered you? So many years ago, it was many years prior to this, that Kaikeyi had saved actually Dasharatha's life on the battlefield, and he was so grateful. Not once, but twice. Yeah, and so twice he says, I'll give you 2 benedictions, 2 boons. Tell me your wish, I will fulfill. And she, a little bit clever, she was also daughter of a king, so Kshatriya nature. She said, let's save the wishes, and when I really need them, then we will ask. So now the time has come, and so the point is, we can imagine this situation, right? The general category, if you like, is palace intrigue. You know what an intrigue is? Splitka. Spletka. Yeah, it sounds like it. And palace? Palacha spletka. Yeah. Right? It's quite believable because, reading history, it happens all the time. So this is quite believable. What we might not find so believable is the reaction of Rama upon hearing the order of his father. And the Ramayana goes on and on about how broken the father Dasharatha was, that he had to keep his promise. But what happens when Rama hears this? That he's been ordered to go to the forest for 14 years. He says, "Oh, okay. So, let me get ready." And he immediately starts preparing. He gets rid of his fancy clothes. Actually, Kaikeyi, the stepmother, supplies him the clothing for the forest, which is made of bark of trees. We can't even imagine what kind of cloth that would be. But if you take certain kind of trees, and archaeologists have found specimens of such material in China, dated to 6,000 years ago. They'll take the bark of the tree, peel it off, and they pound it. They pound it so it becomes very, very thin. But still, it's very rough. So Kaikeyi, who has made this whole scheme, and everyone is crying and wailing, and Dasharatha says, "No, don't actually go. You have to go to the forest. Don't go." Ramachandra says, "Yes, Father, this is your order. I am your son. This is my duty. I'm out of here." He doesn't quite say, "I'm out of here." That's a little bit English slang. And then Kaikeyi says, "And here are your clothes for the forest." Ready to go, yes. The verse says, tyaktvā yayau vanam asūn iva mukta-saṅgaḥ. Just like a liberated soul can give up this life, this body. So he was ready to go to the forest. One of the themes of the story of Rama is this feeling of separation. The Sanskrit word is viraha. Separation, the sense of absence that one feels in the absence of a beloved, someone who is dear. The entire population of Ayodhya suffers this feeling of viraha when Rama leaves for the forest. Actually, they won't tolerate that he leaves. Initially, they all go with him. The entire population follows Rama for some distance into the forest. Eventually he has to secretly slip away in the night, and he has to make arrangements so that his tracks are covered so they can't follow him. So this feeling of viraha is very strong. But then it's going to become even more interesting, because it says here in the translation, let's see, is it? Yeah, Srila Prabhupada. No, it's in the Sanskrit also. Sa-bhāryaḥ, with its wife. So Rama, it says he leaves everything, and then his wife comes with him. And you may say, well, come on, that's not so bad. He had his wife with him, right? But actually, having his wife with him was more trouble than to not have her with him. I mean, it was very nice with her, but then it became trouble. And in one verse, in this chapter, or the next chapter, no, it's in this chapter, it actually says that. It actually says that this story of Rama tells of what a challenge it is, because Rama had made a vow to have only one wife, unlike his father. But it says, this story of Rama tells how difficult it is to have even one wife. Hare Krishna. Sorry, ladies. What can I say? It's my duty. Shri Shri Panchatattva ki jai. Of course, this is all part of the wonderful story that initially Ram is going to go by himself, and then Sita says, I'm going with you. And Rama says, no, you can't go with me. It's very dangerous. It's dangerous. It's the forest. We're talking serious danger. Wild animals, so many possibilities of disease, so many dangers. No question of you going. And besides that, you need to stay back because you're going to need to protect my mother. Because now the situation, the political situation in the family has unfortunately become spoiled, although there had been a nice spirit, a nice mood of cooperation. But now my stepmother has spoiled that, and it could be dangerous for my mother, Kaushalya. So you're going to have to stay back and take care of her. And Sita says, I'm sorry, but I'm your wife. The wife is always with the husband. That's dharma. And she speaks very strongly, so strongly that Rama can't say no. And so he takes her. And then Lakshman, his brother, one of his brothers, says, I'm coming with you. It's not so difficult to convince Rama for Lakshman to come, although initially he tells him also, you should stay back and take care of the family. But he says, no, I'm coming with you. You are my life. You are everything to me. So actually, Rama is not entirely alone. But then, what's going to happen? By force of circumstance, Sita and Rama are going to be separated. And this then will be the situation of viraha, of separation, which Rama and Sita will feel for each other in their period of her being captive in Lanka, having been taken away by Ravana, and Rama looking for Sita, looking, searching, crying. We're reminded that Rama is the Lord in the mood, in the form of a human being. So he has the emotions, the feelings of a human being. So this is very, very rich, this sense of separation, of loving separation. And this is a very dominant theme, especially in relation to devotion. At the same time, there's this whole subject of dharma. And what is dharma? As I said, morality. It's often put in terms of what is called duty, what should be done, what should not be done. In this case, in the verse we've read, as we've pretty much explained already, Dasharatha is under obligation to his wife Kaikeyi. He has given his word, his promise. Promise keeping is a major principle of dharma. In early times, you didn't have written contract. There was no need. You had word of promise, and that was enough. And if promise was not kept, that would mean loss of reputation. And as Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, there's nothing worse than losing your reputation. It's actually worse than death. So in Vedic culture, this principle is there. Dasharatha, as a king especially, needs to uphold his promise. And it's going to cost him his life. Because his sense of absence, in the absence of Rama, leaves him no purpose to live. Well, all of this begins with a very painful episode. This is a translation of one of 7 parts of the Ramayana, done by my Sanskrit teacher, Robert Goldman, and his wife Sally Goldman were my Sanskrit teachers almost 20 years ago. I realized, I thought about this yesterday, I realized, whoa, 20 years ago. Time flies. So I thought we could read just a bit from this, and then we'll see. Then we'll see if there's some discussion. We'll be discussing more Ramayana the next days, and then on Wednesday, of course, also Ram Navami, the 9th day of the moon calendar. Not the very first chapter, but the second chapter of the first portion called Balakanda, or the portion about the childhood or the youth of the Lord. The second chapter tells us the story of how the Ramayana of Valmiki came to be composed. Valmiki is a sage who is living in the forest. He's living a very simple life. He has a student named Bharadvaja. He is living such an austere life. He's wearing cloth made of this bark of trees. So they're next to, they're next to this river called the Tamasa River. And he's bathing and drying himself. Then it says, this is verse number 9, nearby that holy man saw an inseparable pair of sweet-voiced krauncha birds wandering about. Krauncha is, it's a large bird. I forgot the English name right now. Beautiful birds. So this was a pair, male, female. But even as he watched, a nishada hunter, the nishadas are a particular tribe of India, a nishada hunter filled with malice, with hatred, and intent, determined on mischief, on trouble, struck down the male of the pair. He shot this bird. Seeing him struck down and writhing on the ground, his body covered with blood, his mate uttered a piteous cry. And the pious seer, seeing the bird struck down in this fashion by the nishada, was filled with pity. Then, in the intensity of this feeling of compassion, the Brahmin thought, this is wrong. Hearing the krauncha hen wailing, the female krauncha, he uttered these words. Since, Nishada, you killed one of this pair of kraunchas, distracted at the height of passion, you shall not live for very long. So he's cursing this hunter. You're going to die soon because you have shot this bird at such a time when it is mating. This is not dharma, this is wrong. And even as he stood watching and spoke in this way, this thought arose in his heart. So now this is Valmiki, he's thinking to himself. He says, stricken with grief for this bird, what is this I have spoken? But upon reflection, that wise and thoughtful man came to a conclusion. Then that bull among sages spoke these words to his disciple, Bharadvaja. He said, fixed in metrical quarters, each with a like number of syllables, and fit for the accompaniment of stringed and percussion instruments, the utterance that I produced in this access of shoka, grief, shall be called shloka, poetry, and nothing else. So this is the origin of poetry, according to the Ramayana. The first poem was spoken in Sanskrit verse in the form of what's also called anushtup meter. It's verses with 8 syllables to a line. And Valmiki is saying, after he pronounces this curse, oh, what have I said? What have I just spoken? I spoke a verse. This was poetry. And then he says, and I was speaking this in a certain emotion, and very intense emotion, of what in Sanskrit is called shoka. Shoka means lamentation, pain, like that. Grief. In grief, actually. What's grief in Slovenia? Yes, all of that. So in that mood, shoka, he spoke a shloka. And so now we have the entire Ramayana, because then he's going to go back home to his little home, his little ashrama, and he's going to still be disturbed about this. And at that moment, Lord Brahma is going to appear, and Valmiki is going to confess his grief at this experience that he had. And Brahma says, "This is a shloka that you have composed. You need not be perplexed, confused about this. O Brahman, it is by my will alone that you produced this elegant speech. Greatest of seers, you must now compose the entire history of Rama." And so he takes this as his order, and indeed Valmiki composes the entire Ramayana, some 24,000 shlokas, all in this same form, shloka form. Unlike the Bhagavatam, which is in several different meters of poetry, the Ramayana is in this form. So it's interesting that the birth of the story of Rama is an occasion of grief. And it's an occasion of grief seeing a human being interfering with nature in a violent way. I think this is also significant, that it's a human being. It's a semi-civilized. The tribals, the Nishadas, are considered actually not civilized. They are hunters. So their dharma is hunting. He was doing his dharma of hunting, but he was going outside of his dharma by shooting this bird while the bird was mating. But it's also significant that this happens at a moment of mating, which means a moment of passion. The Ramayana is about dharma, it's about bhakti, and dharma is very much about controlling passion, so that we can elevate our consciousness beyond the passions to spiritual passion, which is bhakti. Bhakti is also about passion, but it's the difference between iron and gold. Yes. What is it? Atmendriya pritivangsha dhare balikam, krishnendriya priti icha dhare premanam. Prema is passion for the Lord, for serving the Lord. That is what we are interested to, sometimes we say cultivate, another way is to say is we want to uncover, because it's already there, covered in our hearts. And that's the opposite of kama. Kama is material passion. It's a passion of wanting for ourselves, for what we think is ourselves, our temporary collection of senses we call the body, material body, which seems to give us so much joy at moments between long stretches of suffering, right? So the story of Rama is bringing this out, how Dharma, through his example, Rama's example, gives us a way of understanding ourselves, understanding the world, to see things clearly, as Prabhupada says elsewhere, to see things as they are. That's what the mode of goodness is, to see things in their right position, so that we can do what we really want to do, which is to exercise bhakti, devotion for the Lord. All right, that's just a bit of preliminaries on Lord Rama. So we've said something about setting the scene and something about the realism of the Ramayana, how we can relate. We said something about how the Ramayana is bigger than life, and that's, I would say, why the Ramayana endures. It's heard again and again. And in India, people go to performances of Ram Leela dramas, which last a whole month, every day performance. And the audience, they completely know the story. They know exactly what's coming next. We usually think, you go to some show, some drama, watch a film, read a book, because you don't know what comes next and you want to find out. You can't wait to find out what happens next, what happens next. With Ram Leela, everybody knows already exactly what's going to happen. And still, they're on the edge of their seats, as if, what's going to happen next? Rama, you're going to the forest. They're feeling like they're part of, like they're citizens of Ayodhya. And when Sita is abducted, no, don't take her, no, Ravana, get him, Jatayu, get him. They get very involved like this. This is so, and why is this so? Because it's bigger than life, and it makes our lives significant. We see even our small, tiny, insignificant lives. We see some kind of echo, some reflection, some resonance with our own lives. This sense of reversal, for example. We all have some experience in our life when there's some great loss and some upside down in our life. So like that, we can relate with Ramayana. Right. Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki, Valmiki Ramayana ki, Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments for a brief time? Oh, so many. Oh.
No question. At the same time, there was Parashuram was around slaying all the kshatras, and Dasharath avoided it by having marriages all the time. So how come that Ravana and Parashuram?
Okay. This is a kind of a interesting but technical question. One of the avatars of Vishnu is Parashurama. There's Rama, also known as Ramachandra, and then there's Parashurama. Parashu means axe. It's Rama with an axe. Yeah. He was a heavy guy. His way of preaching was with an axe. Forget about, there's nothing to discuss. And there's a meeting at one point between Rama and Parashurama. It's a very interesting meeting. Just after Rama has won this bow, the arching bow of Lord Shiva, this massive bow. He has taken it as a prize because he was able to lift it. And one thing about the Ramayana, it's very much a classic hero story. We can talk about that another time, but Ram is a hero. And as a hero, he lifts the bow of Shiva that nobody's able to lift, and he takes it as a prize, and he takes with him as a prize Sita as his wife. And on their way back, they're just leaving from what's the name of the city of Janaka? Yeah, Mithila. They're just leaving Mithila and returning to Ayodhya, and on the way, Parashuram stands in the way. Who do you think you are? I heard they call you Rama. Well, I'm Rama. How dare you be called Rama, because I'm Rama. So it's kind of a standoff. And, this Parashurama, it's a heavy guy. He's really, really heavy guy. And he's big, and he's really powerful. And Ramachandra, he's just 16 or 17 years old. But Ramachandra defeats him. We might come to that. Won't go into it, but he defeats him. And Parashuram leaves. Okay. Hare Krishna. You are Rama. Hare Rama. Yeah, so the question is about Parashuram. Why, as an avatar, he wouldn't, since he was killing Kshatriyas, why didn't kill Ravana? Well, sort of the predictable answer, because then there wouldn't have been the Ram Leela. Yeah. I mean, that wouldn't have been a very fun story, because he was anyway killing so many, so why not Ravana as well? No, it could also be, there's so many sort of sub-stories that Ravana had some benediction, that he couldn't be... That was it. Ravana did have a benediction. He could not be killed by any being except a human being. So apparently Parashurama is not considered a human being. He's considered to be sort of more like a tribal, so again, sort of not quite civilized. So I think that would be the reason. Yes, question.
So what was Kaikeyi's second wish?
Kaikeyi's second wish. The two go together. One was that her son, Bharata, would be crowned king rather than Rama. The second was that Rama would be sent to the forest for 14 years. Yeah. The idea was if Rama is away for 14 years, then Bharata will be able to consolidate his power. But what she doesn't understand is that Bharata is a devotee of Rama, and when he hears what his mother has arranged, he's completely outraged. He says, "This is completely mad, what you have done." Discuss. So then Bharata says, "All right, please give me your shoes." So he gives him his shoes, and Bharata goes back to Ayodhya, and he installs Ram's shoes to represent Rama as the king. And he makes it clear to Ayodhya, Rama is still the king. And then he himself he takes himself into exile nearby to some, I don't know, suburb of Ayodhya. What's it called? Nandi something, Nandishwar. And there he stays, and he lives an extremely austere life. He wears bark clothes. He sleeps on the ground. He eats barley, which has been cooked in cow urine. Yeah. And that's all he eats for 14 years. Barley is some kind of grain. Yeah. You know, it's been quite a while since I've read that part, so I don't remember. She was assisting, so she was a bit of a kshatriya herself. Does anyone remember that detail? I'd have to check.
I'm wondering when would be the appropriate time to kill this bird by the hunter who's staying in Dharma?
Oh, any other time apparently than when he did. The question was, when would be the appropriate time for a hunter to shoot an arrow at such bird? Apparently any time except then. Well, probably the bird has to be awake also. Yeah. Yes.
There are so many editions of Ramayana. Is there one that you recommend? Or?
This is quite good. There's a condensed version from Bhakti-Vikas Swami Maharaj, which is very good. But it's a condensation. Means you're not getting the full Valmiki Ramayana. But this series, which, however, I don't know if they have published the final 2 volumes, come to think of it. 5 volumes I know are available. They worked many years on this. This has been a translation of what's called the critical edition, which is, anyway, that's another story, how they establish a certain text. It's very carefully done, and I like it because although they might not be Hare Krishna chanting devotees, they really, I know 2 of the translators, they had a very, what I saw, quite a devotional mood. They would read not only the text, but also some of the established Sanskrit commentaries on the text, mainly Sri Vaishnava commentaries, I believe. So they were studying, very carefully. So I think it's quite good. There are other abridged editions. There's Krishna Dharma Prabhu's edition. There's so many. Yeah. Yes. Can laws of Dharma change with time?
Yes. For example, the hunter was a Dharma in that time, but today being a hunter can't be Dharma. There is no need to be a hunter.
No need to be a hunter. Why? Because we have slaughterhouses. Anyway, don't get me started on that. Yes, Dharma changes with many different parameters, different circumstances, time, place. Desha, Kala, Patra, these are 3 factors generally considered. Desha means place, Kala means time, and Patra means literally receptacle. It means the person in question. And so there's quite a complex calculus, you can say. But the essential principle of Dharma, aside from what should be done, there's what are we? And what Dharma is really about is realizing what we are. And that is referred to as Sanatana Dharma, which means eternal Dharma, that which does not change. So in the Bhagavatam you'll find, for example, in the 7th canto, quite some details describing the practices of what's called varna and ashrama, varna-ashrama dharma. But also then there will be a section on samanya or sanatana dharma, the principles which apply to everyone at all times. The first of which is ahimsa, non-violence. So then you may ask, so then what about hunter? If it's the dharma of the hunter to, hunt. There's a story, we find it in another book, the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Narada is in the forest. He meets a tribal who is hunting, but before he meets the animals that the hunter has killed. But he has not killed them, he has only wounded them. And when he meets the hunter, he says, "What are you doing? You're a hunter. Why do you only wound them? Why don't you just kill them straight, so they don't suffer like this?" And the hunter says, "This is how I learned from my family, from my parents, from my father. We always did it this way." Sort of way. Huh? Strange, but okay. The point being that Narada accepts, you're a hunter, okay. That means killing animals. That's your dharma, that's fine. But don't unnecessarily do this violence of wounding them so that they die a slow death. That's crazy. So in a sense, that's also an acknowledgement of this principle of ahimsa. Anyway, it's a big subject. Then there's the bigger periods of time, yuga, dharma. So we're finding ourselves now, according to Bhagavatam and I guess Mahabharata, we're finding ourselves in this age called Kali Yuga, the age of Kali, of quarrel, hypocrisy, short lives, disturbance, everything. So the dharma for this age, what is it? It's to glorify the Lord. Kalim savajayantya gunagya sarabhagina yatra sankirtanena eva sarva svarto vilavyate. Yatra sankirtanena, by sankirtana, by this congregational, collective kirtana, glorification of the Lord. Sarva svarta, all desires, all your artas, all your needs, abhilavyate, they'll be fulfilled. So, welcome to Kali Yuga. Okay? Yes, Mataji.
Does the name Rama have some significance, like Krishna is all attractive?
Yeah. One explanation is that it means the reservoir of all pleasure. It has to do with pleasing, the pleasing to the heart, the Lord who is pleasing to the heart. And that's nicely elaborated, you can say, in another book, the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Gopa Kumar meets Ramachandra. He's so pleased. Initially he's pleased, but after some time he starts to feel like, yes, but he's too much into the formalities of Dharma. He's missing his rājya. He doesn't say anything, but he feels that. And Rama at one point he understands, yes, you want to go, you should go. You should go to your home, to Vrindavan. Yeah. Okay. Right then. Thank you all for your kind attention. And for those of you who've maybe just come the first time wondering what's this all about, we hope you're having a good time. And we know there's some strange things that we do, like wildly singing and dancing sometimes. But anyway, we hope we'll see you again next time. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj, for this nice